Keanu Reeves sat in the dimly lit McDonald's, his fingers wrapped around a lukewarm coffee cup. Across from him, Ethan sat hunched over, clutching a small toy car, his fingers tracing its chip paint. The boy's face was pale, his eyes darting nervously toward the man beside him, Harris. Keanu had encountered many difficult situations before, but this one felt different. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, knowing he had to keep Ethan safe. Just then, the waitress returned, placing a folded napkin near Keanu. With a discreet nod, she stepped away. Keanu picked it up and unfolded it beneath the table. The scribbled words sent a wave of relief through him. The police are on their way. Keanu took a deep breath. He had to keep Harris distracted until they arrived. He turned toward him with a neutral expression. Why don't we all sit down for a moment? Sometimes, kids just need to be heard. Harris's cold stare bore into Keanu, but after a moment of hesitation, he nodded and sat back down. His fingers twitched as he muttered something into his phone, growing more agitated by the second. Keanu knew time was running out. He needed to protect Ethan and uncover more about the situation. Harris ended his call abruptly and stood up, adjusting his suit jacket. He glared at Keanu and Ethan, his expression growing darker. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," he muttered, starting toward the door. Keanu's mind raced. He couldn't let Harris slip away now. He subtly shifted his position, making sure Ethan stayed behind him. Harris's movements were calculated. He wasn't just leaving, he was planning something. As he reached into his jacket, Keanu braced himself, ready to react. Before anything could happen, the waitress reappeared, placing another folded note under a glass. Keanu discreetly picked it up. "They are 2 minutes away. Hold tight." Keanu had to keep stalling. He turned to Ethan, gently guiding the conversation back to his mother. "You mentioned your mom is hurt. Do you know where she is now?" Ethan hesitated, glancing at Harris, who clenched his fists. Keanu caught the movement. Harris was losing control. "That's enough," Harris snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "This is none of your business." Keanu remained calm. "If she's hurt, it's everyone's business." Harris leaned in, his voice low and menacing. "I suggest you stop now. You don't know who you're dealing with." Keanu met his gaze steadily. "Maybe I don't, but I do know the police are almost here." The words froze Harris for a split second. Outside, 2 police cruisers pulled up to the entrance. 2 officers stepped out and entered the restaurant with purposeful strides. The waitress subtly pointed in their direction. Harris straightened his jacket and forced a smirk. "You've made a big mistake." He turned toward the exit, but Keanu shifted slightly, positioning himself to keep Harris from bolting. The officers approached. "We received a call about a potential issue here," Officer Ramirez said. "Everything is fine," Harris replied smoothly. "Just having lunch with my son." Keanu stood. "I think you should hear what Ethan has to say." Officer Vega knelt to Ethan's level. "Hi there. Can you tell us your name?" Ethan hesitated, then whispered, "Ethan." Vega smiled warmly. "Can you tell us what's going on?" Ethan's grip on his toy car tightened. His voice was barely audible. "He hurt my mom." Silence fell over the restaurant. Harris's forced composure cracked. "He's lying. He's just a child." Officer Ramirez placed a firm hand on Harris's chest. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us." Harris's anger flared. "You have no idea who you're messing with." Officer Vega quickly handcuffed him. Harris struggled, but the officers overpowered him. As they escorted him out, he muttered threats under his breath. Keanu knelt beside Ethan. "You did the right thing." Ethan's voice was small. "What about my mom?" "We're going to find her." At Ethan's house, the front door was slightly ajar. Inside, the living room was in chaos. Overturned furniture, broken glass, and signs of a struggle. Ramirez and Vega entered cautiously. In the center of the room, Sarah lay unconscious, a small cut on her forehead. Keanu held Ethan back as paramedics rushed in. "She's going to be okay." Sarah's injuries were not severe, but the emotional scars ran deeper. Meanwhile, in Harris's confiscated backpack, police found a notebook detailing his disturbing plans. He had been monitoring Sarah and Ethan, planning to take the boy out of state. From the police car, Harris sneered, "This isn't over." But for Ethan and Sarah, it was the beginning of a new chapter. Days later, in the hospital, Sarah's eyes fluttered open to see Ethan holding her hand. Relief flooded her features as she realized they were safe. Keanu stood nearby, watching over them. The doctor reassured them Sarah would recover fully with time. Ethan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding and turned to Keanu with a timid smile. A few days later, Sarah was discharged. Before leaving, she turned to Keanu with tears in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." Keanu smiled. "I was just in the right place at the right time. The real hero here is Ethan." Ethan gripped his narrow-paired toy car, a silent reminder that even broken things could be restored. Determined to help others like Sarah and Ethan, Keanu partnered with a local organization supporting domestic abuse survivors. He stayed in touch with them, ensuring they had the resources to rebuild their lives. Months later, a ceremony honored Ethan's bravery. As he stood on stage, receiving an award for his courage, he handed Keanu a drawing, a boy and a man holding hands, with the words "My Hero" written in colorful letters. Keanu smiled. "You're the real hero, Ethan." The boy beamed, knowing he was safe at last. As the weeks passed, Keanu found himself increasingly involved in Ethan and Sarah's lives. He helped them find a safer home, introduced them to counselors, and ensured Ethan enrolled in a new school where he could feel safe and supported. Though initially wary of new faces, Ethan slowly began to open up, finding comfort in the new routine. Sarah, now healing both physically and emotionally, found strength in the community that had rallied around her. She took self-defense classes, determined never to feel powerless again. Keanu attended her graduation from the program, proud of how far she had come. Ethan, now more confident, invited Keanu to his school's career day. Standing in front of the class, Keanu shared stories not of Hollywood but of real-life heroes, the people who helped others despite fear, the ones who made a difference in small but significant ways. The children listened intently, and Ethan beamed with pride. One evening, as Keanu prepared to leave their new home, Ethan ran up and hugged him tightly. "You saved us," he whispered. Keanu knelt, looking into the boy's eyes. "No, buddy, you saved yourself. I just helped along the way." As he walked away, Keanu knew this was more than just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of something greater. And for Ethan and Sarah, it was a promise of a future filled with hope.